Welcome to section 21.5. This is the 213th session of the CISSP exam prep series. In this session, we'll look at how attackers exceed the access they were granted. We'll answer several questions. Where do we go for trusted guidance on web risks? What is an insecure direct object reference? How does a directory traversal attack escape its boundaries? And how does file inclusion turn browsing into code execution? Why does this matter beyond the exam? Because authorization gaps let ordinary users see and do things reserved for others. Imagine you secure a document portal for a city government. If a resident can nudge a number in a link and read someone else's private filing, you have a breach without a single line of malware. Understanding these flaws lets you insist that every request is checked for permission, not just authenticated. Where do we go for trusted guidance on web risks? A great starting point is the Open Worldwide Application Security Project, a non-profit and community focused on securing web applications. It freely shares methodology, tools, and techniques for better coding and safer deployment. Two of its resources are especially handy: a running list of the most critical web application risks and a companion list of proactive controls to defend against them. Either one is a solid foundation for planning a security assessment or a penetration test. Think of it as a shared, community-maintained field guide to what actually goes wrong and how to prevent it. What is an insecure direct object reference? It happens when an application hands you data based purely on an identifier in your request, without checking whether you are allowed to have it. Say a link fetches a document by its number in the URL. There is nothing wrong with that by itself, as long as the app still verifies your permission. The trouble comes when it does not, because then you can simply change that number and pull up documents that were never yours to see. A real case involved a young person who noticed request records were numbered sequentially and read others' filings just by editing the identifier. The fix is straightforward. Check authorization on every object, every time. Picture a coat. Check that hands over any coat if you just say a different ticket number. How does a directory traversal attack escape its boundaries? Some servers are misconfigured so that users can wander the file system beyond the web content folder. The web content usually lives in one designated directory, and everything is assumed to sit under it. But on many systems, a special sequence in a path means go up one level. By stringing that sequence together, an attacker climbs out of the web folder and reaches sensitive files elsewhere, such as the file that stores hashed user passwords. If access controls do not stop them, the server happily displays that file in the browser, handing over a starting point for cracking credentials. Picture a hotel keycard that, through a flaw, also opens the door to the basement records room. How does file inclusion turn browsing into code execution? File inclusion takes traversal one dangerous step further. Instead of just reading a file and showing it to the attacker, it actually executes the code inside that file. There are two variants. Local file inclusion runs a file already sitting somewhere on the server, working much like traversal but with execution. Remote file inclusion is worse, letting the attacker run code hosted on a completely different server they control, without ever placing a file on yours. Once attackers succeed, they often drop a web shell, a small interface that lets them run commands and read results right in the browser. Cunningly, they may even patch the original hole behind them, both to avoid detection and to lock out rival attackers. Think of a burglar who not only gets in but installs their own remote control, then quietly fixes the broken window to hide the entry. So let's bring it together. Authorization attacks are about exceeding the access you were given, often with no malware at all. The Open Worldwide Application Security Project gives you trusted lists of the top risks and the controls that counter them. Insecure direct object references let you swap an identifier to reach others' data, so check permission on every object. Directory traversal climbs out of the web folder to grab sensitive files, so lock down file access. And file inclusion escalates browsing into remote code execution and web shells, so validate every path and input. In every case, authenticating a user is never enough. You must authorize each action. The MCQs covering all the topics and concepts from this session are available on RooCloud.com. Practice the chapter-specific MCQs before moving on to the next session. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or feedback, post a comment below or email us. I will see you in the next session.